Hey everybody, Roxabox90 here, back with another top 10 EDH Commander card countdown. This one is for Battle for Zendikar. So today we're going to go through my top 10 favorite cards from the set, following similar criteria that we followed in other top 10 Commander lists. This is multiplayer Commander only, is number 1. 2 is that we're going to try to make the most color use, global use towards the top, as well as actual play use towards the top of the list, and then as it gets more narrow and niche, goes down towards the bottom. Since this set has some very interesting cards, I'm going to be a little bit more flexible because I also want to consider cards that have very interesting dynamics or are well designed, but a side point to those original criteria. Briefly, some honorable mentions. We have 2 cards that are reprints that are fantastic in Commander, but are reprints: Dragon Master Outcast and Felidar Sovereign. Both see a good amount of play in Commander in certain style builds, but they are reprints and so are off the list. Oblivion Sower. Exiling effects do exist in Commander, but haven't been as heavily done before, and this card I think will be much better in regular constructed formats versus multiplayer Commander. Scour from Existence, great removal spell, can technically go in every deck, but many decks would prefer things like Karn Liberated to this card. Endless One, infinite combos in Commander happen all the time, especially for infinite mana, and this card could be a lot of fun with that, but there's nothing really else to it. Align Hedron Network, multiplayer Commander has lots of powerful creatures, and for decks that run a lot of weenies, this kind of card is a fun budget version to other forms of removal of larger creatures. Defiant Bloodlord, there are lots of gain life, lose life style decks in Commander, Oloro being one of the most popular in multiplayer, and this card fits right in with that kind of style deck. Drana Liberated Malakir wraps up our honorable mentions list. She is very good, especially in tiny leaders, but for multiplayer Commander, I think she's nothing particularly special and requires a lot to get her going by comparison, given her size and strength and ability. Alright, so that wraps up the honorable mentions. Let's get to the top 10 list. Starting off number 10, Dehedren Grinder. This guy is a very narrow card. Obviously, the most straight up use of him is Goblin style decks, because of the fact that he allows you to double up spells. So if you have a pump spell, it allows it to hit and target every single one of your goblins in an aggressive style. A very common theme that can be used for him. He also works very well if you have, so he works very well with these kind of pump attributes, works very well in a horde style kind of deck. There are other ways of using him, but for me, I think very narrow in terms of the kind of decks he could fit in. It's probably going to be some kind of mono red or red white kind of aggressive style deck. If other people have more versatile ways of using him, let me know, but I think that puts him down the list. Number 9, Desolation Twin. What's Commander without huge bomby creatures? And having a card that can't effectively be countered without giving you, even if it's countered, giving you a 10-10 and potentially 2 10-10s, it just screams huge impact shaking Commander is fantastic. Number 8, Emiria Angel. She is perfect kind of Commander card. She's a huge angel, glorious artwork, especially as a foil, and the fact that she works in any deck that wants her. You landfall, gives you a non-land permanent card from your graveyard to your hand, which is recursion effects. Things like Genesis have been around forever that do this kind of thing, and that's awesome. But really you want is if you're landing planes, which makes her a little bit narrow because you're going to want to run her in a deck that has lots and lots of planes to really abuse that final effect and get things from your graveyard into play. I think she's definitely going to see a lot of play in Commander. Slight narrow, and the fact that she's such an expensive creature, there are ups and downs to her. Number 7, we have Sire Stagnation. This guy is a lesser Consecrated Sphinx. Let's be straight up about that. If Consecrated Sphinx was even in discussion, this card is not that. But at the same time, there are lots of lands being played in Commander, and this puts a chokehold on the board where if people are playing lands, then you are drawing out of that, which is huge. And I think that, if you can't afford Consecrated Sphinx, you don't have it, this guy will probably end up being a very cheap budget alternative. Number 6, Omnath Locus of Rage. Huge powerhouse, this guy. He is multicolor to the effect. He's a bit tough to run outside of colors, at least 2, probably 3 color kind of decks, but elemental decks are definitely a thing. He works very well with that, and that's his biggest area of impact. But to be fair, he also makes huge creatures, and if you have land heavy ramp decks, which exist all over the place, he's going to be horribly abused. Great card for Commander. Number 5, Kiora Master of Depths. She works very well in constructed 60 card deck formats without a doubt. In Commander, I think she's also great because she's not an immense target. Her first 2 abilities don't do enough to make her, an instant removal planeswalker, but at the same time it gives you incremental advantage, which is great. Also allows you to protect her and give ramp effects, and of course her -8 is a pure Commander Impact card. She's multicolor, it's a little bit more narrow, so to speak, but overall I think she's absolutely fantastic for the format. Number 4, Green Warden of Marasa. Speaking about cards that can go into any decks, this guy is just a bigger bodied Eternal Witness. We've seen plenty of cards like Indrik Stompowler versus Reclamation Sage, and this guy is essentially the same thing but for Eternal Witness. It's also nice that you can exile it from the grave to get another effect, then you get 2 cards back if you need, but regardless, if you have any kind of green aggressive deck that has some kind of recursion, I think he's going to see play there. If anything, I don't see him seeing play as much in constructed formats. Number 3, Obnixilis Reignited. This guy, it's mostly because he's, again, not as threatening a Planeswalker as some others that are seen in the format, but he straight up removes things. He gives you consistent long-term card draw. Things like Phyrexian Arena are huge in Commander format, especially multiplayer, and this guy is an arena on a Planeswalker. The final ability is fantastic in a multiplayer format, gives you a real chokehold. I would use it more politically because if you actually activate, you can't get rid of it. But as a political card, this is the kind of effect you want to be able to do. Number 2, Void Winnower. This guy is one of the best designs in the set, and I can fit into many decks. It's hugely aggressive. It's going to be very interesting to play against and play with. Is it as good as some of the cards in the list in terms of its use across decks? Maybe not as much, but in terms of design, I can't even go into the flavor of design, and having this card land is going to be so interesting to see in the format. Number 1, if anyone didn't expect it, then, well, you shouldn't be surprised. Ulamog Ceaseless Hunger. This guy is what the first Ulamog is on steroids, and given how prolific and how prevalent the first Ulamog is across multiplayer Commander decks, this guy is going to be no different. More importantly, the most important thing about him is that he can be reanimated. Yes, does he exile things when that happens? No. Does it mean he's not a ridiculously powerful creature? He is, and he's one of the few cards in the game that with repeated attacks actually could threaten to mill out a player in Commander. Not something to be taken lightly. So chump blocking him doesn't stop. It's also interesting that if you straight up cast him because he only costs 10, then he exiles 2 permanents, which is fantastic. The most well-rounded impact card of the set. It should be pretty obvious. I kind of feel bad in a sense putting it number 1 because I'm sure you guys all guessed it, but he just is the best card for the multiplayer Commander format. That's my top 10 list for Battle for Zendikar Commander. If you guys enjoyed it, then please tap the like button. If you're new to the channel, check in and subscribe. I'm working on some non-set specific top 10 lists, so I hope you guys will enjoy those when they come out soon. And as always, Roxabox and 90 signing out. I'll see you guys next time.